all I do know is this. I don't know whether the White House is directly involved because we can't get an answer to that question, but we do know that they are making some claim that a privilege may apply. Well, that narrows the category who may be intervening here. We also know that there are other institutions involved that are preventing us from getting the complaint. And whether this is pressure brought by the White House, whether this is the Director of National Intelligence feeling that he is straitjacketed by this opinion of the Department of Justice, whether the Department of Justice is coordinating its activities with either the White House or the subject of the complaint, we don't know. But given the Inspector General said this is urgent, it can't wait, which is a profound concern that we have over what we have seen over the last year, which is a concerted strategy to run out the clock on any information getting to Congress. Here, where it's urgent, that is simply not an option.
Mr. Schiff, why were you not able to get an answer today about whether or not the White House intervened, and why were you not able to get an answer about the substance of the complaint?
Well, there is no privilege that covers whether the White House is involved in trying to stifle a whistleblower complaint. And I should say that even if you could make a colorable claim of privilege over the subject matter of the complaint, given that it involves something that the IG has already found to be serious and credible and evidence of wrongdoing of one kind or another, there is no privilege that covers that. There is no privilege to conceal that. There is no privilege to be corrupt. And so that needs to be provided to Congress. We can't get an answer because the Department of Justice and the Director of National Intelligence will not authorize the IG to tell us. And the Inspector General is doing his very best to be very careful that he follow the law. And in some respects, the Inspector General is in the same position of the whistleblower, which is if the Inspector General steps 1 foot outside of what he's authorized to do, then he is not protected. And so this shows how someone is trying to manipulate the system to keep information about an urgent matter from the Congress.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.